Pixel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the weirdest Grunting Pixel podcast you've ever seen in your entire life.
Doesn't get weirder than this.
I am the Grunting Pixel, and with me I have one person, and that is Steph.
Hey.
And, what should we be? Galactic
Let's
Rebel?
be rebels. Let's be
We'll
the
be the
heroes
rebels.
of the
We'll be
day.
the Blasters. Oh, I can choose from any of them? That's kind of cool. I don't know what any of these do. Steph, why don't you explain why we're here and the whole situation while I figure this out?
Well, this evening we had the opportunity to finally watch The Force Awakens, the 7th Star Wars.
Well, why don't you explain why nobody else is here and why this is such a weird podcast?
Oh, well, you see, I don't remember what we did on Thursday, but we completely forgot.
Yeah, so basically,
gather around and-
ooh, look how pretty this game is.
It is
There's gonna be a lot of game commentary, so this is kind of like a let's play, like hodgepodgery.
This is kind of like the Star Wars podcast. Not necessarily.
We'll be talking about more than just Star Wars, hopefully.
The game.
But,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's gonna be just a lot of us talking, a lot of the game. But Jared wasn't gonna be joining us for this podcast because he had nerd things to do, which is cool. And we knew that he wasn't gonna be joining us. But Alex and I and Steph were all going to record a podcast, and Thursday came around, and I got onto, the good old computer at around, what was it, like 10:30 at night?
Yeah.
And there was just a message being like, so does that mean we're not doing the podcast? And that was the moment that I realized that today was Thursday. So we didn't record the podcast, and Alex, that was the only time he had available, which is understandable because that's the time that we told him to be available, and we didn't do it. So it is now Saturday night, technically Sunday morning. Steph and I just went and saw The Force Awakens for the first time, and that made us kind of want to do some Star Wars stuff. So we bought good old what is this, Battlefront
3.
because it was on sale for half off, and I was like, I kind of wanted this game, so oh, whoops. I've wanted this game for a while, but I was kind of nervous about, it not being worth the price, but I figure it's kind of hard to beat, $30 for all the stuff that it has nowadays. So we're doing that. So we're playing. We'll have this in the background. Figured it's appropriately Star Wars themed. What did I just do? Did I kill myself? Oh, I'm alive. So Steph, Force Awakens. Why don't you give everybody your very well-versed Star Wars background, seeing as you've seen all the movies.
Well, here's a disclaimer. Oh boy. All right, so the only Star Wars movie I have seen through completion was the 4th Star Wars movie and the first one. I've seen half of the second one. So obviously I'm not well versed in the Star Wars universe. I know the gist of what happens. I know, the plot twist of the franchise.
Did you know that Luke was Anakin Skywalker's father?
What?
That wasn't even accurate.
That wasn't even accurate, no. But no, I don't know, is this a spoiler-free?
Yeah, I want to keep this spoiler-free. We
Okay.
could do like a spoiler-free end thing, like maybe have a section at the end. I don't think there's not really many spoilers for The Force Awakens,
Yeah, there's
honestly.
only maybe one big thing.
Yeah, there's
and a
like 2 or
couple-
3 ones that you could really spoil.
Yeah, but aside from that,
and they're not really important to talk about the film in my opinion.
Yeah, they're not that critical. There are huge, shakeups in the lore, but as a film, it doesn't really. It's not. We can safely not talk about it. Is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think it's pinnacle for deciding whether or not it was a good film. Or not. I thought this person was dead. They were just
We're just hiding.
prone down there.
So I gotta say, this game looks fantastic and feels like a Star Wars film, and I'd have to say the same thing with the 7th movie that we just watched. Again, I haven't watched, all the Star Wars films, but I've seen enough of Star Wars to recognize, what makes Star Wars Star Wars. And I definitely would have to hand it to J.J. Abrams and his direction with this new movie, because I felt like I was watching a Star Wars film, and I think that's something that, you should really make sure you capture, the essence of a franchise. Oh, you died. when carrying on that legacy.
Well, it's interesting because I think it feels Star Wars enough, but it still felt different. Like, we were watching, and within the first couple of minutes, I leaned over to Steph and I said, this is not directed the same way that good old Lucas directs his stuff. Like, there is just things in just the way that Lucas sets up shots and how he handles all that stuff that was clearly different, but I think it's better in this movie. I'll give a general opinion on the film, and we'll go into more depth with it. But I gotta say, it was really way better than the last 3 attempts that Lucas had at this franchise. It was what the prequel should have been in my book.
Yeah, I agree with that. Honestly, if without those prequels, I think if it transitioned from the original trilogy to this new trilogy, I wouldn't, that it would be a perfect transition. Well, I wouldn't say perfect. I'm sure some people would find some fault with it, but personally for me, I find it as a very smooth transition to the next generation of Star Wars characters.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that time has passed in this movie. Like, they got all the actors who played in the original, and they're old now. Like, this isn't, the 70s anymore. Yeah. This is, 2016, 2015 when the movie came out. So everybody's old. So there is that, but it was just like, okay, so a little bit of background on me for my Star Wars. I watched all the originals, when the originals were out, and I watched the prequels, and even as a kid, I kind of knew the prequels were poopy shit. And I just got stuck on a little lip there. And so I actually never ended up seeing the third prequel movie. I saw the first one repeatedly because I was pretty young when that came out. Like, I don't know. I don't remember when that one came out. 2001? Was it?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure, to be
Early
honest.
2000s. That's all that's important. And I saw the second one and didn't like it, again, as a kid. Like, I think I saw the second one once. And because I didn't like the second one and the first one was kind of just passable, I never saw the third prequel. Like, I just never did it. I'm just like, I hear it's bad. I didn't like the other ones. It kind of looks stupid. And I never got around to it. And so when, episode 7 started coming out and they're like, hey, we got episode 7 going on, I'm just like, well, I guess I should probably watch this movie before I have no idea how to use this gun. Before I see the new Star Wars movie, and I watched it, and I'm sorry, I know a lot of people think that the third one is the best of the prequels. That movie is so freaking bad.
Yeah.
It is. It's not only one of the worst Star Wars movies, it's just one of the worst movies. Like, the acting is terrible. It hurts to look at because it looks so freaking fake. Like, a lot of people are like, wow, it's really cool because they got the awesome Jedi fight scene in the end. And like, okay, cool. They got a decent choreographer. That doesn't make it a great film. Like, it was just such a bad flick. Like, everything that happens in the setup of that thing is so, like, ham-fisted and cheesy. But, like, the thing that stuck out to me the most is they're, sitting there, and they get stuck in, like, a ray beam field or something like that. And I'm not even kidding. This is pretty much how it's acted. He's like, what? A ray beam? How did we get stuck in this? We're smarter than this. Like, it sounded like it was cut straight from Resident Evil 1. It was so poorly acted. And I'm just like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this is a Star Wars film. I can't believe this is what I'm watching. So, needless to say, it's infinitely better than that hot street trash. But there's not much that isn't better, or is not better than that hot street trash. So, yeah, I really liked it. I really liked it. It was one of those things where, like, I thought I would have a lot to say about it, but it's really just kind of an enjoyable flick. It's just like, hey, do you like Star Wars? This is good Star Wars again.
It was nothing deep either. Like, it was also easily digestible for someone like me who hasn't seen the other films, but know generally, what happened. Like, I know kind of like generally what the plot happened with the last 3 movies. So it was easy to follow this new movie without, knowing the extensive lore or anything like
Well,
that.
that was the thing that kind of sucked about the prequels, is that it was just like, the prequels were like, the first one starts off as like, hey, we're going to talk about Anakin Skywalker, and there's going to be a little bit of like, politics in there. But like the second and third movie were just like politics with a little bit of Star Wars inside.
Yeah.
Like it was really convoluted, and
Honestly, the only information that you need to know in this new Star Wars is who's related to who. Because they do kind of play with some of the plot twists here of some lineage and, who's the son or daughter of who a little bit. And you kind of need to know that, because there was a point in the movie where I was a little confused until like I kind of thought about the family tree in my head. And I'm like, oh, okay, so there's a possibility of this person being the child of this one or the relative to this one because of this. But aside from that, you really don't need to know anything about like the the council or anything like that, because it's explained to you throughout throughout the movie. It's almost like, all right, whatever lore that happened in the past, that's in the past. Here we've got like the new First Order, we've got the new like kind of like the Republic kind of carried on, but it is essentially a clean slate that carried a little bit of heritage from the older films, but it doesn't necessarily rely on it. It's one of those things where like if you know the lore from back in the day, it would probably be like a little bonus, but it's not something that's required.
They do a good job kind of like getting newer people to like understand it.
Like,
there's a lot there for the fans. Like they maybe almost did too much of like relying on the past, like not necessarily films, but just things about or happened in them. That'll be something I bring up here in a second, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that, like, if you are not familiar with Star Wars, which I know it's like, well, who's not familiar with Star Wars? But I mean, there's people like me who kind of like, missed that era, where it is just a fun movie to watch. It is easy to follow, and it's perfect for Star Wars fans and, Star Wars newbies alike. I certainly will watch the next movie when it comes out. I think it's a well-crafted film, and it doesn't...
God, that is awesome.
It doesn't overbloat... No, that's really cool. It doesn't overbloat itself with just, like, meaningless lore or anything like that. It gives the play...
This is significantly less awesome, but still pretty cool. What am I doing?
All right.
What just happened? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's pretty much a good introductory film for the next generation of Star Wars fans. Honestly, I'm likely to pick up that Star Wars Aftermath book that came out a while ago that supposedly, if I understand correctly, covers events that happened after the first movie. I'm more likely to pick up that book and start reading it. Now since like Disney
after the first movie being
the first
7?
I'm sorry, yeah, the seventh movie. The first movie, the new J.J. Abrams trilogy. So after the events of this movie that came out, I believe that's what Aftermath covered. I'm likely to pick up that book because what I really like about this is that like this movie is that it keeps things simple but allows a layer of depth to be available for those who seek into it, I'm sure. So, yeah, that's pretty much my verdict. It's a fun film. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It pretty much trim off the fat. Doesn't go lore heavy. Doesn't give me a bunch of jargon to try to figure out on my own.
No mention of midichlorians, so that's always a plus.
That was fantastic. I was able to suspend my disbelief and think of the Force as some kind of mystical, like, force. Rather than this weird scientific bug thing that was kind of
amoebas, not bugs.
that kind of was shoehorned in the prequels. So yeah, no,
I think it's interesting to watch me just run around and collect all the collectibles that I don't know where they are.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. Honestly, I'm just looking at you.
It gives me a chance to just absorb how beautiful this game is.
No, seriously, that is also one thing I have to hand it to over the team that dealt with the Star Wars movie. This game looks beautiful. The Star Wars movie also looks great. they did a good job making it
Shooting
look like an
anything that
authentic Star Wars film. There are some characters and some things that obviously are used, CGI. They use CGI for that. But there are a lot of instances where you can see that they are real life props and they look really good.
Yeah, it was actually kind of funny because there was so much use of practical effects in that movie, so much, which is awesome, that it actually made the CGI stick out even more than I think it would have otherwise.
There were two characters that I could think of off the top of my head where I'm like, oh, it would have been greater if they used practical effects like they did with everything else. Because as soon as I saw those two characters,
what was the second one?
The second one, the first one, I'm sure you know, it's
the
girl one. Yeah, okay. The second one was the traitor. Who, that one. Yeah, where I thought both of them, would have benefited for practical effects. But I understand for the girl one, why they use CG because
the thing is they used practical on anything that didn't talk.
Yeah, anything that really moved, I think it was.
Damn.
Because we had a few characters that talked. I think it's the movement.
Well, but as I'm saying, they were the ones that mostly talked, that had a lot of precise lip syncing that you need.
Yeah.
Oh, there's hero health. That's where it seemed like they relied on the CG because, I don't know what's worse, CGI, that kind of you could tell is CGI, or seeing practical effects that look like a puppet because it's just not making the shapes that you expect.
Honestly, I would prefer the
come
puppet
from.
look over than the fake CGI look.
I don't know.
Because at least the puppet look is still grounded in reality.
Yeah, but then it's reality that doesn't make any sense because it doesn't match.
I guess so. I don't know. I'd take awkward puppetry over bad CGI every day.
But it wasn't bad CGI. That's the thing.
No,
you can tell it was CGI.
I'm just saying on, overall, in any movie that you watch, I would rather have the director, have mediocre puppetry than some crap CGI. I'm not saying for Star Wars, but just any science fiction or any fiction movie in general. Yeah, that's my thought on it. But aside from the whole thing where they use practical effects to the point where the CGI is noticeable. Well, not noticeable, but you can tell it's
you
CGI.
pick it up.
Yeah.
Because practical has practical is interesting because it doesn't have that kind of stench that a lot of people get from CGI, but you can always tell when something's practical, and it still looks fake in the sense of that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have that uncanny valley that comes with it.
Yeah.
So there's the trade-off. Again, I don't want anybody to think that we're bash on the CGI. I think the CGI looked really good.
Yeah, that's what
it was more noticeable because you were seeing all these crazy things done practically, and you're like, oh wow, that's cool, that's practical, that's practical, that's practical, all that stuff. And then you find that one guy is just wow, I think I'm actually gonna lose. I don't know if what I'm doing wrong. I think it's I'm not killing enough. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
I'm just shooting and talking.
I'm just blabbering.
Just shooting and talking.
Shooting and talking.
But yeah, no. I think my biggest complaint, and it was interesting because there was a lot of people. What are you doing, dude? There was a lot of people complaining. Yeah, I think I lost. Okay, great. Great, I lost. Cool. I'm really not sure how I lost.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing decent. Defeating forces to collect their tokens win the battle. Destroy. First 100 points wins. How do they get 100 points before me? Whatever. I don't care. What was I saying? Oh, a lot of people were complaining about the episode 7 saying it was too rehash. It was way too much I felt like they just took the first 3 movies and turned them into one movie type thing. And I'm like, well, that kind of sounds, unfortunate. After watching it, I don't necessarily think I agree with that.
Yeah, I think
there was a lot of rehashing. Don't get me wrong.
I think a lot of the film plays homage to the 3 films, but I don't think it's necessarily a direct copy. I think what they did is just that they took elements from the 3 films, kind of mix it up to make it seem familiar, but did enough differences so that it feels fresh.
Yeah, I think the problem that a lot of people were having and what they were trying to say, and this I do agree with, is they stuck with too much of the old.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get anything spoiler here, so you don't have to worry about that. But what new stuff did we see that wasn't in other Star Wars films?
Honestly, I think what we saw were just new characters. The whole concept about, this character having a stormtrooper background. Aside from that, it follows a lot of the rules of the older films, which isn't a bad thing because in a way it's almost keeping to the tradition of the older Star Wars films.
Yeah, sorry.
Aside from that, it is if you have seen other Star Wars film, you can kind of predict how the plot will go in here. Now there are some twists.
Well, I don't even mean necessarily like in the plot. I'm just saying like all the ships were the same, and one of the ships that everybody spends most of the time in is from the original, few.
The
and
only thing I can say is the stormtrooper uniforms and the uniforms and the certain aesthetics of the First Order have changed a bit.
A little bit, but it was very
too drastic.
And again, I don't want them to completely have a different, thing. I didn't want to be like, well, why is Star Wars Star Wars? I'm not trying to say that at all, but
nothing has been introduced that is new. I think
I don't think this is a spoiler to say that the Millennium Falcon is in the movie.
Considering Han
it's just a
Solo and
ship.
Chewbacca
Yeah.
has been, plastered.
And I'm
through
pretty
the
sure that they put the Millennium Falcon
advertisement.
in the trailers. I don't know that for sure because I didn't see all the trailers.
If
'cause I
not,
wanted to.
that Chewbacca and Han Solo's in this movie.
Either way.
The Millennium Falcon has to be in this movie.
But it's in most of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's in the most of the movie, and this is the most of the movie, and that's the most of the movie. And it's like a lot of the old and not a lot of the new. And again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but the movie was so good, but so familiar to the point where it almost felt like they were afraid to try something new.
Which is understandable considering J.J. Abrams had this huge, well, not just J.J. Abrams, but the entire crew, the Star Wars production team, has this entire huge task, almost to the scope of what Valve has with Half-Life 3, where it's like they have to carry on this huge franchise. And they're like this whole completely different new team. It's not, George Lucas is not even in this project at all. So they have to do something where they have to appease the fans. And in addition to saying, hey, you can trust me even though I've never worked a Star Wars film in my life. And, I know you guys got burned by the prequels, but here, try this. It's one of those things where they have to do something to win the approval of the fans first.
God damn.
Which is why it's so familiar and so, I don't want to say predictable, but, so Star Wars-y now. I think the sequel, to be honest, might take more risks. Now,
Well, the problem that they had is that if they stay too close to the originals, then people are going to complain because it's too close.
Yeah.
But if they do too much different, they're going to be like, this isn't Star Wars. So, I understand that Abrams wanted to play on the safe side, and I
see
can't
that
blame him
too.
at all.
Yeah, I would do the same thing, to be honest, because I think what he did was that he pretty much sat down with his team and go, okay, what do Star Wars fans want from this franchise? And instead of going the Lucas route and kind of going, with...
I think I killed myself.
Ooh, I don't know what just happened.
I killed myself with an orbital strike, but I thought it was on the other side of the mountain, so I'm not sure how it killed me.
I think what Abrams did was that he took his team and go, instead of, going through the Lucas route and going, all right, I just want to take the Star Wars thing and go a completely new direction. I think he just focused on what the fans wanted and kind of worked with that and really weaved in the older, characters and the old lore in this new franchise and create a smooth transition. I thought it was really clever incorporating Han Solo and the other older characters in, because they didn't felt shoehorned for fan service for me. They felt like this was part of the transition, and I don't know, the way that this plot was written seemed very smooth. In terms of there were a lot of points where I just sat back and just thought, oh, well, that just makes sense. That makes sense why this would happen or why this character would act this way. And sometimes it might be better to, when you're, picking up a new franchise, that has been adored by fans for a long time, to play it safe at first and then gradually make these changes. Honestly, I think the biggest changes is the introduction of the 3 new characters, which would be Rey, Finn, and Poe. And from there,
And technically
I think...
BB-8.
And BB-8, yeah, technically.
Which, again, not to get sidetracked, holy crap. Like, when somebody was just like, hey, they added a character that's pretty much the R2-D2 replacement, I'm like, nobody can replace R2-D2. BB-8 probably could.
He is adorable.
BB-8 is amazeballs.
I love BB-8. He's really cute.
I don't care that he sounds exactly like Wally. He is awesome.
Yeah, no, I like the little bot, the little droid. He's adorable. I am A-okay with him being, in future franchises. Which actually brings me to, like, thinking about, I know this is kind of sidetracking a little bit, but about the Avengers. This might be a slight spoiler for if you haven't seen the Avengers 2. But towards the end of the Avengers, a lot of people retired, and they kind of like, but instead we have now these new Avengers. And at first I was a little put off about that, where I'm just like, no, I want my Iron Man, I want my Black Widow, I want these characters. But after seeing, the new Marvel movies that have been coming out,
Hey, dude, I'm
showcasing these new characters that are going to be part of the new Avengers team, I kind of warmed up to them to the point where I'm excited to see more about the Falcon. I want to see more about this character or that character. And I think Abrams is trying to do that, where he probably
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm
has...
still getting over a cold.
He probably has an end goal where he wants his Star Wars to look completely different, but I think he's doing that slowly, and I think he's starting that.
Well, I don't think he wants it to be completely different. I think he wants to keep it Star Wars, but he wants to, add
his to make it his
and
own,
keep it fresh, so it's not just rehash.
And I think he's doing that by introducing these new characters and kind of taking over the roles of the older characters, and I think it's very wise for him to, show like, we have these new characters, but obviously in this film they are giving
that actually worked.
they are giving the mantle over to the characters. Not literally, but almost literally throughout this film. You can see that this is the transition film, and I'm okay with that. I am excited now to see more of Finn and Rey. I want to see Rey, continuing onto her path. I want to see how Finn,
Yeah.
I
think
excited.
Rey is a fantastic character.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less hot about Finn. I think Finn did the best he could, and I think that this main problem that I'm having is a lot of Star Wars aficionados are gonna be like, oh, what a freaking lame idiot for not knowing this. It seems really out of place that a stormtrooper would become defective. Maybe I don't understand the rules of stormtroopers enough, but his whole arc and everything just seemed I don't know, when it started happening, I'm just like, what? What's happening exactly? I'm not quite sure of what's going on here. Is he undercover? Was he never really a stormtrooper or whatever? But then he's like, no, I was a stormtrooper and I hated being a stormtrooper. And I'm like, I didn't think that stormtroopers had that ability.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of was that he was just defective as a stormtrooper, and he was just one of those things of 1 in 2,000.
Well, again, it's just one of those things because as far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, internet, you're really good at doing. In all of the other 6 movies, was there ever a defective stormtrooper? Was that ever a thing? Because I don't think it was.
It was one of those things where, I thought it was clever, but at the same time, it kind of didn't make sense to me. Because to me, I always thought stormtroopers were this faceless, almost machine-like, characters. But it was kind of clever for the team to really be like, well, what if a stormtrooper, in a way, kind of gains sentience? They're not robots, but, in that same manner where, somebody gained a conscience. And I thought that was clever, but at the same time, again, not well too versed with the Star Wars universe, so I'm not entirely sure how drastic this is, but it was kind of interesting to see that side where, okay, what if you give a stormtrooper a personality? What if you start caring about this faceless entity? What would happen? And I don't know, while Finn wasn't the most fleshed out character, I was interested in learning more about that.
No, like I said, I think that he was a great character for what he was, but I think that like it did just kind of like stick out to me as just like, does this make sense? Like, is this something that makes sense? Like, am I missing something?
Yeah.
Because from what I understand, which obviously is limited, I watched most of this when I was a kid. I've never seen that. I mean, there was a whole period of my life where I thought that stormtroopers were just clones. Like, I didn't even know that they were people that they abducted as kids and then inbred into their
I think
pack.
Weren't they clones originally? Okay, see now.
Exactly. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But he's saying that I got taken as a kid. Maybe they were clones in the originals, and they stopped doing clones after the 40 years that nothing happened. Or I have no idea. And they don't explain it.
Yeah,
so for people like us that have no idea or have some sort of misinformation, we're just like,
it's not because I mean, at first I thought it was clones until Finn stated about him being taken away from a family that he would never, have. It's like, wait.
And if they're clones, why would one defect? I mean, obviously they're not anymore. He says that he was taken from a family.
So it's like, okay, so it just doesn't make any sense. But I mean, those are minor details. Honestly, Star Wars is a film that I highly recommend, because it just does so many things right. And I don't know about people who are diehard Star Wars films. I'm sure they will love it too. I mean, I worked with a guy. There was a guy at my work who he is an avid Star Wars fan, and he thought all the places kind of fit. So I don't know.
Just a quick little note. Can I just take a second to just compliment how freaking amazing these character models look?
Absolutely. They look like they're
really
characters.
Good. They look
like
really
they're
good.
That's because like sometimes video game characters are just like, I guess I could kind of see them looking like they're actors. But seriously, you don't even have to put their names in. I can be like, oh, that is.
Well, I mean,
Mark
you can
Hamill.
even say that anyways, but like, I mean, it looked super like, I mean, that looked like Harrison Ford, like a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, and that's also another thing I want to say. Like, even the actors that are old, they still hold up, in the roles that they played. Harrison Ford still did a really good job. Just everybody. I don't know. This movie was really fun to watch. Everybody did a really good job of playing their characters.
Well, that's why I even said, like,
the special effects were absolutely beautiful. Overall, it felt like I was watching a Star Wars film, and I was so excited because this is the first Star Wars film I actually seen in theaters. So it'd be cool to like look back, 20, 30 years from now and just saying like, yeah, I remember watching, the first of the new trilogy back in theaters, and it was just like a really cool experience just to watch a Star Wars film in the big screen. And it feels like one.
But that was one of those things that I was going to say is like, the thing that I found so remarkable about this movie is how unremarkable it was. And that's not a bad thing at all. Nothing stood out as like, this completely broke the mold. This was the most amazing Star Wars movie. But nothing bad stood out either. It was just a good Star Wars film. If you wanted an entertaining Star Wars flick with cool characters and cool action and a story that progressed, then that's what you get. But it's not going to be like, the big reveal, with Vader being his dad and stuff like that. There's nothing super remarkable in that way, but there's also not a Jar Jar Binks or like the Junkyard the Boba guy. Like it was just a solid film. Yeah. Nothing crazy amazeballs, but also nothing crazy bad. It was just good.
And to me, I think that's more commendable than like here's the thing. I respect people who take risks, but I also have a bigger respect I don't want to say bigger, but I also have an equal respect for people who play it safe, because it is difficult to play it safe and not come out as bland. Because there have been, many a times, especially in the video game industry, where people try to do the same thing over and over. Well, it's a little different when it's more frequent, but people trying to repeat the same thing that has been established in the past and be criticized for not doing more of the same, for doing something different. Whereas with this new Star Wars movie, they had that perfect balance of a lot of what you expect in a Star Wars film, a lot of what has been done in the past, but just enough change so that it's it's almost refreshing
Yeah.
to see something different. And I think that's harder to do than doing something completely risky and off the track, or something that's note for note the
I'm
same movie.
Also gonna say something I never thought I'd say in all of my life.
Uh-oh.
I didn't hate the cliffhanger ending.
Okay. I'd agree.
Which is
I was a little,
for anybody
yeah.
who I don't mean to cut you off there,
No, it's
but
fine,
for
it's
anybody
fine.
who knows me, I freaking hate cliffhangers. Like it can literally ruin an entire film experience
yeah.
for me. Like I am one of the most salty people when it comes to cliffhangers.
Yes.
And I didn't hate it. I didn't like it. I wasn't like, you know what, this is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly how I wanted it to end. But it didn't like register to me as like, well, that sucked. It was just kind of like, okay, I would have done that, but you know, whatever. You got to get me to come back, I guess, somehow.
I was a little, like, I feel the same way. I was a little, like, about that cliffhanger ending, but at the same time, it's like, I'm a little biffed about it, not because it's just a garbage cliffhanger, but because I want to see more. I'm excited to see more. I wanted that movie to be 2 more hours long or watch the next movie, like, right then, because I really like what I saw, and I wanted to see what happened next.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt about that
It's
movie.
really hard to talk about the cliffhanger without going into spoiler territory, so I'm going to be very careful with my words. But it definitely got to a point that you were kind of hoping to get to for the entirety of the movie. And then you get to that point, you're like, this is going to be great. And then it's credits. And you're like, damn it. Damn it. Couldn't you just give me like a minute
just
more
a
of
minute
it?
more, but
Yeah.
you can't complain because you already got like about 2 hours of awesome stuff. So it's like, all right, I understand this is the first movie, because I kind of had to remind myself, this is the first movie of a trilogy. So obviously this is going to be, the setup part, the introductory part. And which was awesome, but it's like, I just really want to get into the meat of this thing. But obviously this is something that we probably might see in the next couple of years.
But one of the things that they have set themselves up for that I think is actually kind of going to be interesting is they've given them something. They've given themselves something really meaty to kind of chew on in the second movie. And a lot of times, second movies, especially in trilogies that were designed to be a trilogy from the get-go, have the problem with like the lull, where it's like the first movie is the setup and all this crazy stuff happens, and the second one is just kind of filler stuff until you get to the third one, and that's where all the conclusion happens.
Yeah.
And that can actually be a really annoying situation because you can I don't know what I'm doing. Because then you can be like, oh man, I really wanted, the second one just didn't have a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But they had the thing that I was talking about that you kind of wanted a lot more of at the end of the first one that kind of leaves a little cliffhangy. They're going to have a lot of time to explore that in the second movie. And I think that they're going to have to start the second movie pretty close to when they ended the first one.
Oh, yeah.
And that gives
They
them a
have
lot
to.
of potential of things to do, and that's exciting. But then again, I also wonder if that's just not like really well done, like business, where it's just like, you wanted it in the first movie, well, you didn't get it, but you'll get it in the second movie, so buy it. And it's like, I see.
Yeah.
You slide motherfuckers, you're doing that to me, are you?
It's almost like what we were discussing earlier about how DICE announced that they weren't going to have any expansions to include
Well, yeah, that we should-
elements of the seventh movie in Battlefront 3.
Well, we should reiterate that because the audience wasn't here for that. Steph, when we were debating on whether or not to pick this up so that we could have it as the background for this. I don't even know if we can call this a podcast. This is more like a Star Wars review.
Yeah. Star Wars episode.
But have it in the background. Holy shit balls. Have it in the background. Steph is like, yeah, it's really unfortunate that DICE said they won't be putting any of the Episode 7 characters into this game, and I'm just like, well, they have to give you a reason to buy the second one. The second, Star Wars Battlefront 2 the second time around, seeing as they already have a Battlefront 2.
Battlefront 4.
Star Wars Battlefront V2.
V2.
Star Wars Battlefront 7, Episode 7.
Star Wars Battle 4.
Battlefront 7 Wars.
Battlefront 7 Wars.
But yeah, I mean, then they clearly did that, with the movie. They clearly, everybody knows what they were going in to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Episode 7 hoping to see. And they do get to see it, but not for nearly as long as they were probably hoping. And that was clearly the hook to kind of bring you back for the next one. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to see it. And also, I think I got all the collectibles, which is kind of an amazing
awesome.
experience. Not that these were really that hidden, but I did get it. Collect them all. Pokemon! But yeah, no, it was a really good film. I had a slight personal gripe with the fact that the villain sounded like Bane mixed with the bad guy from the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
It's like exactly what he sounded like. He was a little overprocessed. But like again, that's as nitpicky as you can get.
Yeah, that is just...
At least I can understand him, unlike Bane.
Right? I was concerned at the beginning of the movie, like, oh man, should we got, subtitles for this or something like that? But no, it's just, slightly overprocessed a little bit.
Yeah, it was just a little too much.
Just a little bit. And, there's a point where you do hear him a little more clearly. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, and again, there's some things that I have little complaints with that I'd like to rant about, but they're getting into kind of
spoiler territory.
What people might consider spoiler territory. So I'm gonna leave all that out. But like I said, I think the thing that kind of blew me away the most is just like how little I had to complain about. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, there were a little bit of things, but I mean, it was just a genuine fun film. I leaned into Steph probably within like the first 15, 20 minutes. And I'm just like, man, no wonder George Lucas is jealous because I mean, JJ just did a good job. He just did a good job.
Yeah, he really captured me in, within those first 15 minutes. Like, there wasn't a like, unfortunately, the prequels, like, I understand they got good intentions, but they just did a poor job in capturing your attention for the first, like, act. This new Star Wars movie, it sucked me in within the first 15 minutes of that movie.
It was even more than that. It was even less than that for me. It was like,
yeah, it was
like I was surprised how just like into it I was from the get-go.
Yeah, it was just a fun flick. Like there were hardly any low points in that movie. There was something going on in every scene.
Whoa.
And it wasn't overdone. It was I think if there was one word to describe this...
I ran around this map for like 5 minutes and didn't see a single guy. That's because they're all hanging out here. They're just all just like chillax and all.
If there was one word to describe this movie, I would have to say it was well balanced. I think this new Star Wars movie was a well balanced movie.
Kind of achievable.
Oh, congrats.
Also gotta just comment on how amazingly fashioned Han Solo's little puffy little fur hood neck thing.
I also like the costumes for everybody in this movie too. I love
Can we
Rey's
talk about
costumes.
Rey a little bit more because
she's so awesome.
Really, really, really good character.
Oh yeah, I love her.
Really,
She's
really
like,
well done.
She's badass. She's smart. She has a really cool costume. She's She's a really likable character.
She was probably the best part of the film.
Which is great because she's
Followed
the main character.
right behind BB-8.
Yeah.
Or BB-8 right behind.
Right behind her. Yeah,
right behind
yeah.
Rey, because BB-8 was amazing.
It was adorable.
I made the Wally joke before, but I swear to God, that little bastard sounds exactly like Wally.
But we love Wally, so.
But no, Rey was awesome. Like, she is like the definition of like badass. Mm-hmm. But she's also kind of like.
But she's not too overpowered. She's human.
She's badass, but she has cracks.
Yeah.
In her, and you can see them, come through sometimes. She has weaknesses, and it was just she's just a really well done character. Really interesting. I think she's what they needed. Yes. If they didn't have her, and they didn't have BB-8, and they didn't have Finn, I think this movie would have been significantly less good. Mm-hmm. Like, if it was all just like the old Star Wars people been like, look, the crew's together again. Like, I'd have been like,
we've already seen that.
Yeah. And, okay, I'm going to get some hate for this one. Harrison Ford did not really seem like he wanted to be there. Like his performance wasn't bad, but it wasn't the old.
You know, I did notice that a little bit, but I wasn't sure whether because he was just a little old and tired.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it was.
Like, he did great, but
no, he wasn't bad.
He wasn't, but at the same time, it's just like, I kind of sense a little bit in his acting where it's just like...
Yeah, you look at Rey, and she clearly, the girl who played Rey clearly wanted to be here. She clearly enjoyed what she was doing. And Harrison Ford's just like, I'm kind of cool. I'm kind of all that, so just here's my...
I think he was just
kind of phoned in performance.
Yeah, I think he was more like... Yeah, I'm here just for old time's sake, you know.
I'm here because the pay was good.
No.
That's about it. No, I don't think it was that bad.
No,
like I said, he did a good job, but it definitely felt a little bit more phoned in than I was, I guess, expecting.
No, you know what? It's funny. I was thinking the same thing in the theater, but I wasn't sure whether that was just me because I'm like, maybe I have to just rewatch the movies again. And just see his performance, whether it's just a consistent thing. But I did. You're about to die.
Yeah, I was trying to hide while also looking for collectibles.
I did sense a little bit of just like, it's one of those things where like he has played this role already, and he probably might just be doing this for old time's sake.
And I think that there was also trying to be like a level of like showing that like. Even Han Solo as a character is kind of like tired of doing this. Like he's old and just kind of
because I mean
kind of done with it.
He should have been retired at that point. In Han Solo, not Harrison Ford, but Han Solo should felt like
Harrison Ford should stop acting. He should be retired at this point.
Honestly, Harrison Ford as an actor is still a pretty good actor.
Good.
I mean, he's great. I mean, he still looks. I don't know how old is he? Because like
he's getting up there, man, and he's starting to look it too. He's starting to look rough.
He looks like he's a little rough around the edges.
He's easily the one that looks the oldest. Like of the characters that return. I don't want to list all of them because I don't know if those are considered spoilers or not.
Yeah.
But of the characters that return, he easily looks the oldest.
Absolutely.
He easily looks the most weathered.
But at the same time, even though he looks like the oldest, he still looks pretty good considering, how
Considering my huge lady boner I got from him.
Absolutely. No. No, he still looks like the part of like the... the handsome, smart-ass, smuggler kind of person. He still plays that role pretty well. And I'm surprised, how well he was able to recapture that. But I mean, there really isn't, like you said, there really wasn't much to complain about in that movie. I mean, just little bits and things that actors would do that I'm just kind of like, eh.
And those are just
minor things.
Yeah, and there was a couple parts where I got like pulled out a little bit, mostly just because of my own like lack of knowledge. Like, for example, when that first time the stormtrooper, like kind of like defects.
Yeah,
I'm just like, does this make sense? Like, I am now out of the movie because I don't know if this makes sense. I mean, I didn't hear anybody complaining about it, so I'm sure that I must have just missed something, and that does make sense in the universe. But like, I have to bring it up as a watcher who's not like crazy, like versed. It did seem weird to me. It did seem kind of like, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of stuck out a little bit, but. It's a really good film. I don't really know, like, how would you rate it? Should we go IGN 10 out of 10? Like, how do we want to rate this?
Honestly, I don't know. I'd give it close to like a 9.5.
Out of 10? Out of 10?
Out of 10.
That's actually really high.
That is really high.
That's a really solid review.
It really is because I felt like I had fun. And I would watch this movie again. I would seriously watch it again because it doesn't bog you down with a lot of like lore nonsense. It's focused. It gives you enough information to get by, and it just focuses on the fun. And the characters were fun to listen to. There was some witty banter with some of them. The action scenes were absolutely fun to just sit through and enjoy. I love
fucking Sarlacc pit.
Oh my God! Look
what happens if I jump into it?
Do it.
I don't know if
you'll die.
I will die.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it. Jump
we're behind. I need to do more. I'm like looking around for these collectibles.
Yeah,
there wasn't a Sarlacc pit in the new movie, so 0 out of 10 for
there
me.
There are a handful of jokes that if you've seen the previous movies where you're just like, oh, that's clever. I got what you said. But yeah, just that movie was just absolutely fun to watch. I'd say I watch it, at least rent it. I know it's something that maybe like eventually people would buy. I would also recommend, to add it to your movie collection if you can, but at least rent it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just say there's a couple check
it.
boxes that you should just kind of keep your eyes on if you're interested in the thing. It's just like, do you like Star Wars? If you like Star Wars, then watch this movie.
But even
I
if
can't imagine. Well, I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I can't imagine that if you're a Star Wars fan, that you'll watch this movie and be like, it's just not what I wanted. It just didn't do it for me. Now, if that's true, then please let me know. But it tried so hard to be the Star Wars film that Star Wars, people wanted, which almost might be to a fault. But again, it's still, I'm gonna die.
Oh,
I'm
no.
still alive. It's still good. Like, it might have been a little much, but it's still very good at, being a Star Wars film. So, now my rating. I gotta think about this for a second. I'm gonna fucking explode. I missed again.
Now, also keep in mind, I've only seen the fourth and first movies completely, seen half of the second movie, so I do not have the complete original trilogy of Star Wars to compare it to. So,
or the prequels, really. I mean, you have like the first part.
Yeah, but I remember I saw half of the second one. I stopped watching the second one
because you didn't like it.
I didn't like it. Yeah. So, so this is where my comparison is. I don't know if I should make this compare. I enjoyed.
Do it.
Okay,
Make the comparison.
I'm a larger Stargate fan, and I like Star Trek.
God.
I've seen all 6 the original Star Trek movies, so I have seen like the Star kind of franchises. I haven't seen the Star Wars movies, not because I didn't like them, it's because I just didn't have time to watch the other 2. I remember watching the 4th Star Wars movies at a friend's house, and I just didn't have time to watch the other 2. It's not because I didn't like it, I just didn't have time. I would love to see the 5th and 6th movies. I probably will get around to watching it, especially since I really enjoyed that 7th movie. I really just want to go back and see more of like the original.
I'm curious how they'll compare.
Yeah,
because like it's always a different experience. Like if you see something and then you see a newer of the same something and then go back, there's always like an interesting, because there'll be things that you liked about the new that you wish were in the old, and there'll be things that you forgot you liked about the old that weren't in the new, and things like that. So it's
so yeah, that's just to give you a little bit of background on my own sci-fi history. I don't know if I will also want to count that I love the Mass Effect series, which do take a lot of inspiration from the older sci-fi films. So yeah, that's pretty much where I lean towards, like the Star Trek, Stargate kind of thing. It's kind of, Stargate's a little campy.
One more collectible,
Star Trek's
and I can't find it.
I guess like almost like the idealist, futuristic kind of environment.
I'm
So
using a shield?
again, obviously these are not Star Wars. Star Wars is a completely different beast compared to the other franchise, but just want to give you guys like my science fiction history and what I've consumed and what I like. So from that, I give Star Wars a 9.5. What I look in my sci-fi is something that you give me a world that I want to explore in, something where the lore seems fantastical enough to engage me and make me interested in, and just really fun characters to root for. Like that's all I ask for in my science fiction. Sure, the technological things are really cool to look into, but I'm somebody who focuses more on the strange alien environments and the characters themselves. So that's my view.
I don't think that my review of Star Wars Episode 7 is going to be quite as high. I think, like I said, it's a really remarkable film.
Yeah.
Sorry, not a really remarkable film, a really great film. Like, they did a really good job with it. Like, it is solid. But it just seemed to be missing something. Like, it did everything that it went to do, it did really good. But it kind of felt like it rested too heavily on, like, the fact that other Star Wars are out. And, it really wanted to be an old Star Wars film. And I think that they might have done that a little too much. I don't think there was quite enough fresh, quite enough new to kind of really stick it out. And again, it didn't have any like remarkable, thing. Like in every Star Wars movie that I can think of, you can find at least one part where you're just like, that was the really notable thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most notable thing that sticks out to you? Because to me, nothing.
The way I see about this Star Wars is that it, like how it was with the first Hobbit movie, was that it's
Did
just...
I lose?
I don't know.
I think I did. Damn, I even tried.
It's a lot of setup. I think the Star Wars, or actually the first Lord of the Rings, like if you would compare, trilogies, this felt like the setup movie, but at the same time, it felt like a setup movie, but it had substance to it.
Jesus, sorry,
so there
microphone.
wasn't necessarily a specific well, actually, I could think of one, but it's a huge spoiler, and it was towards the end. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and I'm sure people who are listening might know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That was a cool moment, but
actually, you know what?
It wasn't that amazing.
I think the cool moment is when Rey kind of figured out something.
And
she figured out, and I think that's one of the coolest moments of the film.
These are cool moments, but they're not like
the defining.
Cool they're not cool in comparison to other cool moments. You know what I mean? They're cool in terms of the film, but again, they're not anything that like really blows my mind. And I like what you're talking about. There was a moment with Rey where she kind of discovers something about herself, and her kind of way of figuring it out was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was great. I like that part.
The thing that I want to say is like, I don't think they did anything bad. I think the only thing is they just didn't do anything like crazy spectacular. Like it was all good.
Yeah.
Everything they did was good, which is why, like I said, I'm not giving it a bad review. I would say it's an 8.
Okay, yeah, that's a high score. That's good. That's good.
It's an 8.
Yeah.
It's really good. I think it needed a little bit less of kind of relying on old stuff. I think it needed a bit more new, a bit more identity.
That might be something we might see in the sequel or the third movie.
Well, I hope so. I hope that the sequel kind of finds its place a little bit more. Because again, I think the main problem is he tried too hard to be Star Wars, which sounds like a weird thing, but it was so desperate to be Star Wars, it forgot to be a new Star Wars.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that. I can see that.
Which I know is going to piss a lot of people off. But that's kind of how it felt like to me.
All right. I see that.
So, definitely a great film. I do not regret purchasing. I did not regret spending the money and the time to go and see it in theaters. I thought it was a very fun movie. It was one of the better movies I've seen in a while. And I've seen some movies recently in theaters where I'm like, well, that was a waste of money. And it was not like that. I think that if you like Star Wars, this movie is for you.
Yeah.
Maybe too much so, and you might kind of agree with me in that regards. But again, it's like your favorite meal, but it's like a little too salted. It's not enough that you're like, well, I don't want it. You're just kind of like, I get that with a little less salt. And that's about it.
I ate the entire plate, but here's some recommendations for next time.
Yeah, it stuck out enough to you to make note of it, but it's not enough to like really affect your perception of it in any real negative way. I think Rey's awesome. I hope that they explore her a lot more in the future.
I really want to know her background. Like,
they alluded to it.
Yeah,
but there's never anything concrete. There's a few theories. There's also one of the villain people who is like, I basically think of him as Thanos.
Yeah.
For this, where like he's like if you've seen any of like the Guardians or like the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff recently, like Thanos just kind of like shows up every once in a while and he's like the biggest baddest cheese that the villain of the movie kind of talks to. And there's pretty much that same type of character. And there's some interesting theories on him, but then we're getting into some spoiler territory when we talk about his stuff. So. Any closing thoughts? This was kind of the weirdest podcast I think we ever did.
I don't know.
Not much humor.
Not much humor, no, but I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't know.
Mostly review.
Sometimes it's interesting just to hear other people's opinions, just blabbering about while shooting other people in video games.
Yeah, I mean, we were originally planning on just like saying, well, I guess we didn't have a podcast, but when we finished the movie, I was just like, we're gonna be talking about it.
Yeah.
Might as well record it.
We did this with Deus Ex. Or I'm sorry, Ex Machina.
Deus Ex.
Sorry.
Ex Machina.
Sorry,
Speaking of Ex Machina. Two main characters from that movie also in Star Wars.
Yeah, the guy who plays Nathan in Ex Machina and the guy who plays, I'm sorry if I don't remember his name, but the main character in Ex Machina, the guy who won, the thing.
I know them as their actors' names, oddly enough.
Okay,
Domhnall Gleeson and Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, both of them are in that Star Wars movie.
And they both do a fantastic job.
Yeah, but they play completely different roles, and it's crazy because at first I didn't recognize him until GP brought him up on IMDb, and I'm just like, whoa!
It was funny. I'm looking at, like, they showed, I don't remember his name in the movie, but the Oscar Isaac character, he showed up in the movie, and I'm looking at him, I'm like, I know this guy. I don't know why I know him. Oh, Jesus, back off, snipers. But I know this guy. And so I just went to IMDb, and then as soon as his name popped up, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I look over to Steph, and I'm like, you're not going to believe who this is. And she's like, who is it? And I show it. She's like, what? And she like completely lost it.
They look completely different in this film. Like they're very, I mean, I've only seen them in two roles, within Ex Machina and Star Wars. But so far, I mean, those are completely different roles, and they seem like very flexible actors. So that's, hats off to them. Playing those roles.
And I think anybody who saw Ex Machina would know that Oscar Isaac is an incredibly talented actor. So it didn't surprise me so much, to see him and go like, wow, yeah, he did a great freaking job. The one that kind of blew me out of the water was Domhnall, because in Ex Machina, I think I even said this in, our little review of it, is that he was meant to play the awkward, kind of person, but he almost played it so well that it seemed like bad acting.
Yeah.
And clearly it wasn't bad acting, because he did. She wasn't dead.
Shit.
That was really embarrassing.
It's on
clearly not bad acting, because he played a completely different role, and he did a great job.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't even recognize that it was him. Like, he kind of looked like him, but based on like his like acting and like what he was doing and saying, like he has a moment where he's basically, I don't know if this is insensitive, he's basically doing like the Hitler speech where he has his army and he's just like yelling and screaming about how they're gonna annihilate these people, and I'm just going like, this is amazing.
Yeah,
that's really cool. And I don't know how we got onto that, but very, very well done for both of them. And Oscar Isaac, you're my bae.
Aww.
So, any final notes? Closing thoughts?
Oh, this new Star Wars movie is great. I mean, and this Battlefront game looks fun. I mean, that's all I gotta say about it, really.
Yeah, Battlefront was mostly just kind of like eye candy or something.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
When we were sitting there and thinking about it, I'm like, well, Steph's here with me. It's just me and Steph. We're gonna be recording on the same mic, which means that when either of us speaks, both of our little pixels are gonna blink. It's probably gonna be the worst video for the podcast that you could come up with. So I was like, well, let's throw some, game in the background this week, just because it's topical and relevant, and it's
Star Wars.
Just when the whole crew's here, the other one makes for a decent video, I'd say, just because you can look at each person, see who's speaking, you can really discern who's who, you can associate each voice with each person. But yada yada, that's boring bullshit. Ladies and gentlemen, let us know down below what your guys' thoughts are on the new Star Wars movie. Please keep it spoiler free. I think we're like one of the last people in the world to see this movie. So I can't imagine many people are left to be spoiled, but just be nice. I had something spoiled for me, and that was a bummer, so don't do that. I know it's kind of like can be considered fun to ruin things for other people, but just imagine if you were in the other,
because some people just can't afford it until it comes out on the dollar theater, or until Netflix, or until they can rent it on, Amazon, or wherever. So just keep it nice. Keep it nice. Or if you do try to spoiler, try to do the biggest spoiler tag you can in the comment. Make it play.
No, just don't. I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine. based on our conversation, I don't think there was really anything spoiler that needed to be talked about.
Yeah, that's a good thing about this movie too, where like you can kind of talk a lot about it without worrying about spoiling it. Because I feel like the spoilers that happen in this movie were big, but were isolated. I think would be a good description for it. I
mean, to me, there's really only like 2 things that you can spoil, and one of them's only a half spoil. Like, there's the big spoiler that everybody, has been spoiling for everybody, and I got spoiled. And the only other thing is just like how people are connected. Like, and I don't think that's terribly important.
And what a
well, okay, yeah, that's.
Spoil it, cut it out. Sorry,
ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this was interesting. This was not our regularly scheduled programming.
Yep.
And very different for us. Hopefully you enjoyed. Please expect us to be back on our regular podcast schedule sometime next week, with any luck. I've been the Grunting Pixel. This has been Steph.
Hey.
And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Hey, look at that. Right in time for this to end. I don't know if we won.
Did you win? I don't know. Are you playing Rebels?
I think I was a rebel. I think I was
you a rebel? Oh,
yeah,
mission successful.
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching. I said that 5 times. Let's go quiet.